Captain Hanbin stood at attention in his crisp blue uniform, watching the massive alien ship land at the Seoul military complex. The morning sun reflected off its silver surface, making it shine like a giant mirror. This was humanity's big chance to join the Stellar Confederation, and he knew it. Remember, General Jehovah told him earlier that morning, "Let them see what they expect to see." The old general's words echoed in his mind as the ship's doors opened with a soft hiss. The aliens walked out in a neat line. They were tall, with gray-blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. Their leader, Commander Do-young, had chosen a Korean name to make the humans feel more comfortable. Han-bin thought this was both kind and a little funny. "Welcome to Earth," Han-bin said, bowing slightly. He spoke clearly and slowly, letting the translation device around his neck do its work. "We are honored to show you our military training today." Do-young smiled, showing teeth that looked like small pearls. "We are eager to see how humans fight," he said. His voice came through the translator, sounding almost musical. "Your species is young, but we have high hopes." Han-bin led the alien delegation to the shooting range. 20 of his best soldiers stood ready, their weapons cleaned and checked. The targets stood 100 meters away, simple metal circles on poles. "Begin," Han-bin ordered. His soldiers fired. The shots went wide. Some hit the ground near the targets. Others flew past them into the safety barriers behind. Only a few bullets made contact with the outer edges of the targets. Han-bin heard the quiet sounds of the aliens whispering to each other. He saw Do-young's smile change from polite to amused. The alien commander made notes on his tablet, his long fingers moving quickly across the screen. "Perhaps," Do-young said carefully, "your soldiers are nervous today." "No, sir," Han-bin replied. "This is normal performance." More whispers from the aliens. One of them, shorter than the others, actually laughed but quickly covered his mouth. The demonstration continued for another hour. The soldiers showed their rifle handling, their marching, and their combat formations. Through it all, their shooting remained the same, missing more than hitting. Later that afternoon, Han-bin sat in General Jeho's office. The general poured them both cups of hot tea and closed the door. "How did they react?" Jeho asked, sitting behind his wooden desk. "Exactly as you said they would, sir," Han-bin replied, taking a sip of tea. "They think we're terrible shots." Commander Do-young could barely hide his disappointment. Jeho smiled, the wrinkles around his eyes deepening. "Good. Did you see their weapons?" "Yes, sir. All direct-fire energy weapons. No curves, no bounces, no ricochets. Just like our scouts reported." The general nodded slowly. "They've forgotten something important, Captain. Something that humans learned through thousands of years of fighting each other. The shortest distance between 2 points isn't always a straight line," Han-bin said. It was one of the first lessons he'd learned in advanced combat training. "Exactly." Jeho stood up and walked to the window. The alien ship was still visible in the distance, glowing in the late afternoon sun. "They think they're seeing our weakness, but they're really seeing our strength. They just don't know it yet." Han-bin finished his tea. "Do you think they'll accept Earth into the Confederation, sir?" "They'll probably put us on a waiting list. They'll say we need more training, more development." Jeho turned back to face Han-bin. "And that's exactly what we want. Let them think we're the primitive species that can't shoot straight. One day, that assumption will save lives." The general sat back down and opened a drawer in his desk. He pulled out an old paper book, something rare in their digital age. "Do you know why I keep this, Captain?" Han-bin shook his head. "It's a collection of ancient war strategies. Sun Tzu, Clausewitz, and others. One thing they all agree on: appearing weak when you are strong is the best advantage in war." He patted the book gently. "Our ancestors knew this. We know this. And soon enough, the galaxy will know it too." Just then, Han-bin's communication device buzzed. He looked at the screen and his eyes widened slightly. "Sir, the aliens are leaving. Commander Du Young has submitted his initial report to the Confederation. Can you access it?" Han Bin tapped his device a few times. "Yes, sir. They're recommending Earth be placed in a developmental observation period. They say our military capabilities are—" He paused, reading carefully. "Charmingly primitive, but concerning in their lack of basic accuracy." General Ji Ho burst out laughing. The sound filled his office, warm and genuine. "Perfect," he said, wiping a tear from his eye. "Absolutely perfect." As the alien ship took off that evening, its engines glowing blue against the darkening sky, Han Bin stood with his soldiers watching it leave. Lieutenant Su Jin, his best shooter who had deliberately missed every target that day, stepped up beside him. "Do you think they'll ever figure it out, sir?" she asked quietly. Han Bin watched the ship become a tiny dot in the sky. "They will," he said. "But by then, they'll understand why we train the way we do. Why every miss today was actually a hit, just not the kind they understand." The ship disappeared into the clouds, leaving Earth behind. In their report to the Stellar Confederation, the aliens would describe humans as a species with potential but lacking in basic combat skills. They would recommend at least 5 years of observation before considering Earth's membership again. And in his office, General Ji Ho added another note to his personal log. "Phase 1 complete. The galaxy thinks we can't shoot straight. Let's hope we never have to show them why that's exactly what we wanted them to think." As night fell over the Seoul military complex, the shooting range stood empty. The targets, marked with careful misses, waited silently in the darkness. Each bullet hole told a story, not of poor aim, but of centuries of human ingenuity. Each miss was a message waiting to be read. Sometimes the best way to hit your target is to miss it completely. Tomorrow, they would continue their training. They would practice ricochets off curved surfaces, calculate bullet bounces through complex environments, and master the art of indirect fire. And if anyone was watching, they would see only failure. It was exactly what humanity needed them to see. Because sometimes the best defense isn't a good offense. It's making your enemies think you don't have one at all. 3 months had passed since the alien delegation's visit to Earth. The red dust of Mars swirled outside the colony's thick windows as Captain Han Bin checked the defense systems one last time. Earth's first space colony had grown quickly, with 5,000 people now calling the red planet home. Lieutenant Su Jin walked into the control room, her tablet showing the morning reports. "All quiet today, sir," she said, though the deep space sensors picked up some strange readings last night. Han Bin looked up from his screen. "Strange how?" Before Su Jin could answer, every alarm in the control room started blaring. Red lights flashed as the colony's AI announced, "Warning, multiple unknown vessels approaching. Warning." Han Bin rushed to the main screen. 12 large ships had appeared from behind Mars' largest moon, Phobos. They were dark gray, shaped like arrowheads, and definitely not friendly. "Send the alert to Earth," Han Bin ordered. "And get me General J.O." The general's face appeared on the screen moments later. He looked calm, but Han Bin could see worry in his eyes. "The Ravagers," Ji-ho said simply. "We wondered when they'd show up." "Orders, sir." "Defend the colony. Show them what humans can really do." The general paused. "And Captain, the Stellar Confederation is watching. Their observation post near Jupiter has a perfect view." Han Bin nodded. Commander Du Young would be there, watching what he thought would be a quick defeat of the primitive humans. "Understood, sir. Time to give them a real show." The first Ravager ships entered Mars' atmosphere as Han Bin called all soldiers to their positions. Lieutenant Su Jin coordinated the ground teams, while Han Bin directed the colony's defensive systems. The Ravagers landed 2 kilometers from the colony. Their soldiers marched out in perfect lines, their armor black against the red Martian soil. Their weapons glowed with energy. the same direct-fire technology the Confederation used. Through the colony's cameras, Han Bin watched the enemy commander step forward. The alien was tall, with dark gray skin and red eyes. When it spoke, the translation came through clear. "Surrender now, humans. Your poor aim is legendary. You cannot hope to defeat us." Han Bin picked up the comm system and replied, "This is Captain Han Bin of the Earth Defense Force. We decline your offer." The Ravager commander laughed. The sound was like metal scraping on stone. "Then die poorly, like the bad shots you are." The attack began immediately. Energy beams shot toward the colony, but they hit the shields without doing much damage. The Ravagers advanced confidently, sure of their victory. Han Bin touched his communication device. "All units, execute Plan Echo." Lieutenant Su Jin's voice came back. "Yes, sir. Beginning now." The human soldiers started firing. Just like during the demonstration 3 months ago, their shots seemed to miss. They hit the ground near the Ravagers. They struck rocks and sand dunes. They appeared to fly wild and uncontrolled. The Ravagers laughed as they advanced. Their commander's voice boomed across the battlefield. "You can't even hit us. The Confederation was right about you." That's when the first part of the humans' plan worked. The missed shots had been hitting the ground in careful patterns. The Martian soil, packed loose and full of caves, began to collapse. 3 Ravager soldiers disappeared into sudden sinkholes. But that was just the start. Phase 2, Han Bin ordered. Now the human soldiers aimed at the cliffs behind the Ravagers. Their shots struck precise points, causing avalanches of red rock. The Ravagers, focused on moving forward, didn't notice until it was too late. Whole squads were caught in the falling rocks. In the Jupiter observation post, Commander Do Young watched with growing surprise. Next to him, his assistant said, "Sir, those shots, they're not missing at all." "No," Do Young replied quietly. "They never were." Back on Mars, the Ravagers tried to regroup. Their energy weapons were powerful but could only shoot straight. When human soldiers ducked behind rocks, the beams couldn't bend around them. But the humans' bullets could bounce off surfaces, curve around corners, and create chain reactions. Han Bin watched as Su Jin's team demonstrated their best trick. They fired at metal panels on the colony's outer walls, panels that looked decorative but were actually carefully angled. The bullets bounced perfectly, catching the Ravagers from behind, while they focused on the threats in front of them. "Impossible," the Ravager commander shouted. "You're supposed to be primitive. You can't even shoot straight." Han Bin picked up the comm again. "You're right. We don't shoot straight. We never needed to." More shots, more carefully planned ricochets. The humans had turned the whole battlefield into a giant pool table, with bullets bouncing off multiple surfaces to hit targets from unexpected angles. The Ravagers' advanced shields, designed to stop direct attacks, couldn't handle shots coming from 3 or 4 directions at once. In the observation post, Du Yum pulled up the report he had written 3 months ago. He looked at his words, charmingly primitive, and slowly deleted them. He began writing a new report, this one about how badly he and the entire Confederation had misunderstood human warfare. The battle lasted another hour. The Ravagers, their forces cut in half by avalanches, sinkholes, and ricochet shots, finally retreated. Their commander's last message was simple. "What are you?" Han Bin's reply was just as simple. "We are human. We learned to fight by fighting ourselves for thousands of years. We learned that the straight path isn't always the best path. And we learned that sometimes the best way to win is to let your enemy think they've already won." As the Ravager ships lifted off, leaving their dead and wounded behind, General Jiaho's face appeared on Han Bin's screen again. The old general was smiling. "Well done, Captain. How many casualties on our side?" "None, sir," Han Bin reported. "A few injuries from flying debris, but nothing serious. The colony is safe." "And the Confederation observers?" "They had an excellent view, sir. I think Commander Do Young finally understands what he really saw 3 months ago. The general nodded. Good. Because now the real work begins. We've shown them what humanity can do. Now we have to teach them why we do it. As the Martian night fell, Han Bin stood with Su Jin watching repair teams fix the damage from the battle. The lieutenant picked up a spent bullet casing and held it up to the starlight. "Sir," she said, "do you think they'll ever forgive us for tricking them?" Han Bin looked at the stars, knowing that somewhere up there, the Confederation was completely rewriting their assessment of humanity. "We didn't trick them, Lieutenant. We showed them exactly what we could do. They just didn't know how to look." The spent bullet casing caught the light of Earth, shining bright in the Martian sky. Each mark it had made, each bounce and ricochet, had told a story, not of primitive warfare, but of human ingenuity. Not of poor aim, but of perfect planning. The galaxy had learned an important lesson today. Never mistake capability for intent. The humans hadn't been missing their targets. They had been hitting exactly what they aimed at all along. Commander Du Young sat in his observation post near Jupiter, watching the recordings of the Mars battle for the 10th time. His fingers moved across the screen, slowing down key moments, studying every shot the humans had fired. Each time he watched, he saw something new, something his people had completely missed. "Send a message to Captain Han Bin," he told his assistant. "Request permission to visit the Mars colony. I need to understand." 2 days later, Du Young's ship landed on Mars. The red planet's twin moons hung in the sky as Han Bin greeted him at the airlock. This time, there was no pretense, no showing off poor shooting skills, just two military leaders ready to talk honestly. "Walk with me," Han Bin said, leading Du Young to the battlefield. The Martian morning was cold, but their environmental suits kept them warm. "I want to show you what you really saw during the battle." They stopped at a large rock formation. Bullet marks scarred its surface in what looked like random patterns. Han Bin pointed to them. "Look carefully. What do you see?" Do Young studied the marks. At first, they seemed scattered, like poor shots that had missed their targets. Then he saw it. "They're not random," he said slowly. "They're mathematical." Han Bin smiled. "Every mark is calculated. We knew exactly how the bullets would bounce, where they would go." He picked up a small rock and threw it at the formation. It bounced 3 times, each bounce following the path of the bullet marks. "We turned the whole battlefield into a weapon." They walked to where several Ravager soldiers had fallen into sinkholes. Du Young looked down into the dark holes. "You knew about these caves. We mapped every tunnel, every weak spot." Han Bin showed him a detailed underground scan on his tablet. Those missed shots weren't missing. They were weakening the ground in specific places. When the Ravager's heavy armor walked over them, they fell right into your trap, Du Young finished. "But how did you learn to fight like this?" Han Bin led him to the colony's training room. Lieutenant Su Jin was there with a group of soldiers, practicing shots against a complex set of angled surfaces. Every bullet bounced exactly where they intended, hitting targets that seemed impossible to reach directly. Humans spent thousands of years fighting each other in cities, in mountains, in every kind of terrain. Han Bin explained. "We learned that straight lines get you killed. The enemy expects direct attacks. They prepare for them. But indirect fire, that's harder to defend against." Su Jin demonstrated, firing 3 shots that bounced off 6 different surfaces before hitting a target hidden completely behind a wall. The soldiers clapped, not because it was impressive, but because it was normal. This was how they trained every day. During World War II, one of our biggest conflicts, soldiers learned to bounce grenades off walls to clear rooms. Han Bin continued. "In urban warfare, we learned to use buildings themselves as weapons. Every corner, every wall, every surface became part of our arsenal." Du Young watched as the soldiers practiced more complex shots. "But why hide this from us? Why pretend to be bad shots?" Han Bin's face grew serious. Because we also learned another lesson from our wars. The element of surprise is worth more than any weapon. We knew someday we might need every advantage we could get. They walked to the colony's command center. On the main screen, they could see the Ravager ships, now just dots on the long-range sensors as they retreated from the solar system. "Look at their ship design," Han Bin said, pointing to a detailed scan. "All straight lines, all direct approaches. Their weapons can only fire in straight paths. They never learned to think around corners because they never had to." Do Young nodded slowly. "And now they never will. You've shown your hand." "No," Han Bin smiled. "We've shown one card from one hand. Humans have been practicing warfare for over 5,000 years. This is just one technique we've developed." In the training room, Su Jin was now teaching her soldiers a new technique. They were practicing shots that would hit the ground at precise angles, sending deadly fragments in calculated patterns. Every miss was actually a carefully planned spray of shrapnel. "Your report," Han Bin said, "the one that called us primitive. It probably saved lives today. The Ravagers came in overconfident, thinking we were easy targets. They never suspected that every shot we fired was exactly where we wanted it to be." Do Young looked embarrassed. "I've already sent a new report to the Confederation, a complete revision of our assessment of human military capabilities. But I have to ask, what else are you hiding?" Han Bin led him to a window overlooking the Martian landscape. The battlefield was still scared from the fight, each mark telling a story of human ingenuity. "Commander, have you ever heard the human saying, 'Necessity is the mother of invention'?" "No. What does it mean?" "It means that when humans need to solve a problem, we find a way, usually many ways. We spent centuries killing each other, but in doing so, we learned thousands of ways to fight, to survive, to win." Han Bin pointed to a particularly complex pattern of bullet marks on a cliff face. "Those marks. That's a technique we developed just 3 weeks ago, specifically for Martian rock." Do Young's eyes widened. "You're still developing new methods. Every day. Because that's what humans do. We adapt. We learn. We find new ways to solve old problems." Han Bin turned to face the alien commander. The Ravagers saw what they expected to see. Primitive humans who couldn't shoot straight, just like you did 3 months ago. But they didn't see what was really there. "And what was really there?" Du Young asked quietly. "A species that turned its greatest weakness, centuries of constant warfare, into its greatest strength. We don't miss, Commander. We never did. We just learned that sometimes the best way to hit something is to aim somewhere else entirely." As the Martian sun set, casting long shadows across the battlefield, Du Young prepared to return to his observation post. But before he left, he had one more question. "Captain Han Bin," he said at the airlock, "what would you have done if the Ravagers had attacked Earth instead of Mars?" Han Bin smiled. "Come back in 3 months. We'll show you our urban combat techniques. Trust me, Commander, what you saw today was just the beginning. After all, we've had 5,000 years to practice, and we're still learning." The alien commander nodded, finally understanding that he had witnessed not just a battle, but a revelation. Humanity wasn't primitive at all. They had just learned lessons that the rest of the galaxy had never needed to learn. Sometimes, the most dangerous opponent isn't the one who can hit every target. It's the one who knows they don't have to. 1 month after the Battle of Mars, the Great Hall of the Seoul Military Complex was filled with both humans and aliens. The same room where the aliens had once laughed at human shooting now hosted a historic ceremony. Captain Han Bin stood at attention, watching General Jiho approach the podium. The old general looked out at the mixed crowd. Humans in their blue uniforms sat next to aliens from the Stellar Confederation in their silver suits. In the front row, Commander Du Young sat with the Confederation's High Council members. They had all come to Earth for this special day. 3 months ago, General Jiho began, his voice clear and strong. Many of you thought humans were primitive warriors who couldn't shoot straight. Today, we are here to sign Earth's full membership into the Stellar Confederation. Han Bin remembered that first demonstration, when they had deliberately missed their targets. Now, on the screens behind the general, videos showed the real truth of human combat abilities. The recordings from the Mars battle played, showing every calculated shot, every planned ricochet, every carefully created trap. Lieutenant Su Jin sat next to Han Bin, wearing a new medal on her uniform. The Confederation had created it specially for Earth's forces, the Medal of Innovative Combat. Su Jin had earned hers by teaching alien soldiers how to use curved shots in their training. But this ceremony is about more than just membership, Jaho continued. It's about understanding, about learning that different doesn't mean worse, that what looks like weakness might actually be strength. The general waved his hand, and the screens changed to show new images. They were training videos from the past month, showing human and alien soldiers working together. The aliens were learning to think differently about combat, while humans were learning to combine their indirect tactics with the aliens' advanced technology. Commander Du Young stood up and walked to the podium. He stood next to General Jaho, looking very different from the doubtful alien who had visited Earth 3 months ago. The Stellar Confederation has existed for 300 years, he said. In all that time, we thought we knew everything about warfare. We were wrong. The commander held up a simple bullet casing, one from the Mars battle. This primitive projectile, this simple piece of metal, taught us an important lesson. Sometimes the straight path is not the best path. Sometimes strength lies in thinking differently. Han Bin watched as Du Young told the story of the Mars battle from his perspective. The alien described his shock at seeing humans use the entire battlefield as a weapon. He explained how Earth's forces had turned their environment into an advantage, using science and mathematics to make every shot count, even when those shots seemed to miss. We came to Earth thinking we would teach, Du Young said. Instead, we learned. The humans showed us that combat is not just about power or technology. It's about understanding, about seeing possibilities where others see nothing. The ceremony continued with the signing of Earth's membership documents, but it wasn't just about paperwork. After the signing, General Jiho revealed something new: the Earth Combat Academy. It would be a place where humans and aliens could train together, learning from each other's strengths. Captain Han Bin will lead the academy, Jiho announced. He will teach our allies what humans have learned through centuries of warfare, and in return, they will teach us about the galaxy and its technologies. Han Bin stood up as the crowd applauded. He walked to the podium, remembering how nervous he had been in this same room 3 months ago. Now he felt only pride. The first thing we will teach at the academy, he said, is that every soldier must learn to see what is really there, not what they expect to see. The Ravagers attacked us because they saw what they wanted to see: a primitive species that couldn't fight properly. They learned their mistake too late. He pointed to the training videos still playing on the screens. But you, our new allies, chose to learn from what you saw. You chose to understand rather than assume. That is why we are here today. That is why we will grow stronger together. Lieutenant Su Jin stood up next and walked to a side door. She opened it, revealing a new shooting range. But this one was different from the one they had used 3 months ago. This range had curved walls, angled surfaces, and complex environmental features. It was designed to teach both direct and indirect combat techniques. This is the future of warfare, Su Jin explained. Not just shooting straight, but understanding how to use everything around you. Not just hitting targets, but changing how you think about reaching those targets. The aliens in the audience looked at the range with new eyes. They no longer saw it as primitive. They saw it as a complex training ground where they could learn new ways of fighting, new ways of thinking. Commander Du Young walked over to the range. He picked up one of the human rifles, something he would have considered beneath him 3 months ago. Captain Han Bin, he said, would you teach me how to miss properly? The room filled with laughter, not mocking this time, but understanding. Everyone knew now that missing properly meant hitting exactly what you aimed at, even if that wasn't what others expected you to aim for. Han Bin stepped up to help Du Yum position the rifle. "The first lesson," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "is to forget what you think you know about shooting. The second lesson is to learn what's really possible." As the ceremony ended and the new era of human-alien cooperation began, General Jiho made one final speech. "Today marks a new chapter in the history of warfare. Not because we humans proved ourselves stronger or better, but because we showed that different ways of thinking have value. The Ravagers attacked us because they thought our different approach meant we were weak. They learned that different can be deadly." The general held up his own bullet casing from the Mars battle. This simple piece of metal changed how the galaxy thinks about warfare. But more importantly, it changed how the galaxy thinks about humanity. We are not primitive. We are not simple. We are different. And in that difference lies our strength. As night fell over the Seoul military complex, humans and aliens gathered in small groups, sharing stories and ideas. In the new shooting range, Sujin was already teaching a group of alien soldiers how to calculate ricochets. At another station, alien technicians were showing humans how to combine their indirect fire techniques with energy weapons. Han Bin stood with General Jiho watching it all. "Sir," he said, "do you think we'll ever need these skills again, now that we're part of the Confederation?" The old general smiled wisely. "Captain, the galaxy is a big place. There will always be those who think like the Ravagers, who see different as weak. Our job is to be ready when they come, and to teach our allies everything we know." He pointed to where Commander Do Young had just successfully made his first calculated ricochet shot. The alien was smiling broadly, understanding for the first time the joy of hitting a target by not aiming at it. "Besides," Jiho added, "we humans have one more lesson to teach the galaxy." "What's that, sir?" "That sometimes the best way to make friends is to show them how wrong they are about you. Not with anger or pride, but with patience and wisdom." The night sky above Seoul was filled with stars, and now humans knew they had friends among them. Friends who had learned that sometimes the best shot is the one that seems to miss, and that sometimes the best teachers are the ones you least expect. The galaxy had learned not to underestimate humanity, and humanity had learned that sometimes the best way to win is to teach others how to win with you.